Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtoto to the Srimad is Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtoto to the Srimad is Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavin Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveta Uktabinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Welcome. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Okay, so where are we? Any idea? Okay, we definitely didn't do that. Maybe 16. Huh? Maybe 15. Yes, 15. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this fourth day of April 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we're studying chapter 14, the three modes of material nature. And we're on text 15, page 578. Rajasi Palayam Gatva Karma Sangishu Jayate Tata Palinas Tamasi Mudha Yonishu Jayate Rajasi Palayam Gatva Karma Sangishu Jayate Tata Palinas Tamasi Mudayo Nishujayate Rajasi Palayangatva Karma Sangishu Jayate Tata Palinas Tamasi Mudhayo Nishujayate Rajasi Palayangatva Karma Sangishu Jayate Tata Palinas Tamasi Mudha Yonishu Jayate. Bhushan, you want to try? Rajasi Palayangatva Karma Sangishu Jayate Tata Palinas Tamasi Mudayo Nishu Jayate. No? Go ahead. Rajasi Palayangatva Karma Sangishu Jayate Tata Palinas Tamasi Mudhayo Nishujayate. Rajasi Palayangatva Karma Sangishu Jayate Tata Palinas Tamasi Mudhayo Nishujayate. Rajasi Palayangatva Karma Sangishu Jayate Tata Palinas Tamasi Mudhayo Nishujayate. Rajasi in passion, Palayam dissolution, Gatva attaining, Karma Sangishu in the association of those engaged in fruitive activities. Jayate takes birth. Tata similarly, Palinaha being dissolved, Tamasi in ignorance, Mudhayonishu in animal species, Jayate takes birth. Translation. When one dies in the mode of passion, he takes birth among those engaged in fruitive activities. And one dies in the mode of ignorance, he takes birth in the animal kingdom. Purport. Some people have the impression that when the soul reaches the platform of human life, it never goes down again. This is incorrect. According to this verse, if one develops the mode of ignorance, after his death he is degraded to an animal form of life. From there one has to again elevate himself by an evolutionary process to come again to the human form of life. Therefore, those who are actually serious about human life should take to the mode of goodness, and in good association transcend the modes and become situated in Krishna consciousness. This is the aim of human life. Otherwise, there is no guarantee that the human being will again attain to the human status. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshurunmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, we've learned about some of the characteristics of the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, the mode of ignorance. And now we're learning about the destination of one who's predominantly in the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance. It's made clear that these modes are never pure in a conditioned life. One can be predominantly in the mode of goodness, but also engage in some things in the mode of passion, and sometimes overdo the mode of ignorance. It's like that. In fact, there was a verse like that, that sometimes the mode of goodness prevails, sometimes the mode of passion, mode of ignorance. So what Krishna is describing here is that when someone is predominantly in the mode of goodness, then udvam gachanti sattvasta. He goes up. In other words, you may actually go to higher planet. Those situated, this is the previous verse, those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on the earthly planets. Those in the abominable mode of ignorance go down to the hellish world. So that's what actually we're going to be reading about in a few verses. So the question is, can we, with this knowledge, cultivate these higher modes so that we're not victimized? I mean, to die in the mode of ignorance is to tragically waste the human form of life. I mean, this verse comes up again and again, but it's perfectly pertinent here. Labdva sudurlabhamidam bahusambhavante manushyam artadamanityam apiha dhira turnam yateta napated anumrityayavat nikshayasaya vishaya kolusarvatakshyat. Krishna says in the 11th canto, I think it's in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, you have attained this rare, difficult to attain human form of life. Sudurlabham. There's, just think, we learned very early on that every organism that evinces consciousness, there's a soul there. There's a living entity, an atma. In the little bugs, and the cats and dogs, and the trees, everything that's growing, everything that's living is a living entity, just like us. So what is the difference? The difference is in the grade of consciousness. They're very, very rudimentary in the tree. You know, it hardly even knows it's alive, you know, but it's covered. Cat and a dog, you know, why do people take them as pets? Because they can show affection, they can, you know, they're something. But they're rudimentary, nothing like human life. So what's the special quality of human life? Human life we can think about, we can inquire about the meaning of life, the goal of life, how we can really improve our situation. What's it all about? It's said that human life is meant for inquiring into what is called Brahman, the absolute truth. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. This is like the first of the Vedanta Sutras. It's interesting. Here's a book, begins with the word therefore. Usually therefore comes at the end of an argument, right? But here, so the Vedanta, end of knowledge, it's called the end of knowledge, because it comes as a culminating literature of all the Vedic wisdom literatures. It kind of summarizes the philosophy in these codes, these sutras, which need explanation, these little aphorisms. So what's the meaning? He says, now therefore, having come to the human form of life, you should inquire into what is called the absolute truth. Well, what's that? Second sutra, Janmad Yasya Yataha. That from which everything comes is generated. But then is Janma Adi. Adi means etc. What comes after birth? Maintenance. And finally dissolution. So that which is the source of everything, which maintains everything and ultimately dissolves everything, that we should inquire into. Is it just an impersonal force? Or is there a person there? And the commentary, the best commentary on the Vedanta Sutra is said to be the Srimad Bhagavatam itself, in which Krishna says, Aham evasame agre nanyad yat sarasat param pascharaham yareta cha yobhishishyeta sosmiham. That before there was anything manifest, I existed. And while everything is existing, it is only I that exists because it's all my energies. And when everything is wound up, I continue to exist. That's the absolute truth. So in other words, one should inquire into God, the personality of Godhead, and how the creation takes place, what's our relationship, what is this world, all of those things are called sambandha gyan. And on the basis of that knowledge, we should cultivate those activities and that state of consciousness by which we can return to the spiritual world, where Krishna is there eternally enjoying, and we can resume our spiritual activities. That's the ultimate goal of Bhakti Yoga, which is what Bhagavad Gita is all about. So this understanding of the modes of nature is essential, because this is where we live now. And we should understand we don't want to cultivate the mode of ignorance. We should be careful not to associate with those in the mode of ignorance or things that will bring it. And what's the mode of ignorance? Is basically, it's too much. Let me lie down. Let me procrastinate. Let me take some sleep too much. Take intoxication. No real get up and go. The Western psychology, there's a whole industry, psychiatry and psychology, is to try to bring you from the mode of ignorance to the mode of passion, so that you're really into life and you want to accumulate and enjoy. That's said to be success. But for the Vedic view, that's also failure, to stay in the mode of passion. Krishna says in the 10th canto, while he's at the Kurukshetra, there's an eclipse, and then he met the gopis there, and there was a big samala, and all the residents of Vrindavan. So in that, it's a long story, but he says this verse, Yasyatma buddhi kunape tridhataki swadi kalatrashta bhomi ijidi. Yatirtha buddhi salani nakarjit janesha bhigesha gokara. So the first one is Yasyatma buddhi. Buddhi means the conception. Maintaining the conception that I, the self, the Atma, am this, it's only one word for it, bag filled with mucus, bile, and air, the three dhatus that the Ayurveda tries to keep in balance, that's me. That's on the level of the animal's consciousness. You're like the word is gokara, saiva gokara. It can mean two things. It can mean you can be a cow or an ass, but since we like cows, another meaning is you're like a donkey who carries the hay so that the cow can eat. In other words, you're animalistic. To identify yourself with the body, but isn't that what everyone's doing? All this race consciousness and all of this, incredible false identification with I have so much money, therefore I'm going to keep these people out, and all this stuff. It's all identification on the basis of the body, which you have to do unless you have another way of understanding yourself, and that comes from this knowledge of the Gita and other books like that. That we're all the same. We're all Atma. We're all part and parcel of Krishna. We have, due to our karma and activities, we take birth from over here, over there, and we're in different families and all this thing. But all that is superficial. It's here today, gone tomorrow, or maybe a few years, a few decades. That's nothing compared to the millions and millions of years we spend going from this birth, that birth, this birth. And this verse, Labdvasudurlabham idam bahusambhavante manusham, he says, you have now attained, after many, many births, this human form of life, manusham, human being. And what's the special value? Artadam. That this life, this form alone, compared to all the other cats and dogs and everything, millions of fish, you can attain the ultimate goal of life. Artadam. But like all others, it's anityam, it's temporary. Clock is ticking. Who can deny it? So one has to be dhira, sober-minded, thoughtful. What am I doing? Am I actually working for my ultimate good? Am I defeating my own interest by staying in these modes of nature and ensuring at best another human birth, which is full of old age, disease, death, rebirth, samsara, bhavasagara. We're in this ocean of change, birth, old age, disease. That's the primary impetus for self-realization. Is to say, well, I don't want to do that again. If the first lesson is we're eternal. We're never born, never die. So what's all this birth and death going? It's only the body, the external. So what does that say to us? It says, well, my real interests as an eternal soul are different from the superficial interests of this body. The body may be very comfortable and I'm enjoying some sense gratification. But what's the soul experiencing? He's just riding along, providing consciousness. But by simply forgetting God and engaging in the senses, you're ensuring another birth in this world. And most likely in this age, a subhuman birth. So then you lose again down into the species and you have to wait. So therefore, the third line begins, Turnam, don't waste any time. Turnam means immediately. Yateta, strive. Yes, we have to strive because we're so conditioned to thinking in terms of these modes and these senses and my place of birth, all of this stuff. So we need a process by which we can be weaned of that. We can cure that disease. So it's Turnam Yateta Napateta Namrityayavat. This Anamrityayavat means like death is always like on the corner here. You know, you never know. There was this tragic accident. I don't know what happened, but it was so in Mayapur, of all places, right in the holy Dham of India, where Lord Chaitanya was born and he grew up. Many, many devotees there, and this lady is living there probably for years. She's raising her child, and she's riding on a motorbike. You know, they have these little motorbikes so you can get around quickly. With her 8-year-old daughter. Probably something she's done 100 times before. And something malfunctions in that little engine, and the fuel explodes, and suddenly they're on fire. And somehow they survived. There was an appeal. You know, the girl's in the hospital, requires so much attention. You know, burns everywhere. It must be so painful. I don't know what happened. She may have died. You know, but you never know. Right in the Dham. I mean, what's going on? What to speak of here? You know. So therefore, we can't waste any time. Turnam Yateta, strive for what? Nikshayasa, the ultimate good. What is the ultimate good? To escape from the bonds of these modes of nature and these body after body, and to regain our spiritual form and our spiritual body and go back home, back to Godhead, Srila Prabhupada's immortal phrase, and resume our life of bliss and knowledge with no birth, no death, no time. There is a land like that. It's not just one, you know, the bright light. We're not just going to some impersonal thing. That's what Bhakti teaches. So here, this understanding of how the modes of nature are working are important, because the modes are like, the word is guna. The guna can also mean rope, you know. So we're tied. We cultivate a certain mode. As children, we may grow up in a situation where it's, you know, very scary and frightful. That's another, you know, this fear and anxiety is another symptom of the mode of ignorance. So a lot of it is we can't control. But then when we get older, we can control. I'm going to read this, I'm going to eat this, I'm going to associate with that person, not that person, like that. Especially if we can find an atmosphere that is where we can absorb this kind of knowledge and also realize it. Activity, chanting the holy name, dancing, doing service, reading the books, you know. It's not just a meditation. Meditation is there, it's basically with the chanting. That's very important. But there's a whole lifestyle by which it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can integrate Krishna consciousness as much as possible into your life. You know, just how you're eating. Eating is such an essential factor for living. But there's absolutely no need to eat animals. There's no need to eat all this meat. I've been vegetarian for longer than I've been a devotee, and I've been a devotee for 50 years. And so I'm still going strong, you know. All vegetarian food, prasadam, and not just vegetarian, but prasadam, which is cooked for Krishna, and so it becomes spiritualized. So there's a way of living where you're cultivating the spiritual values of life. Prabhupada defined the word Aryan as those who prioritize the spiritual values of life, meaning not sense gratification values, you know, but spiritual values. Cultivating vairagya, which is important. Vairagya means detachment from the ordinary things that attract us. And we sublimate that attraction to attraction for Krishna. Like music, You know, music is attractive force. Who can deny? There's music in the mode of ignorance, there's music in the mode of passion, and there's music in the mode of goodness. I remember before I even ever heard of, I was an atheist, but then I was getting attracted to yoga and spirituality, and so I love music, and I bought the Bach's Mass in B minor. Have you ever heard of that? I don't know if it's a classic of classical music. And there I was playing it, and there was this whole word. There was a lot of words, because a lot of chorus. You know, it's all very religious. And you know, I wasn't. It didn't radically change my activity, but I think it implanted some attraction for spiritual music. You know, that later fructified, helped to fructify, and attraction for kirtan and the songs. So that's the main thing that activity that we need to do is to purify what we hear and what we speak and what we read. The words, the sounds, the mantra are the primary way in which Krishna manifests to us in this world. It's kind of miraculous, totally miraculous. It's transcendental that this mantra, the name of Krishna, Rama Hare. Krishna is present there in that sound. If you do nothing more but just hear that sound, even if you don't know what it means, you'll be associated, becoming purified. What to speak if you understand who Krishna was and so forth. So that's the process. So this description is so important to understanding where we're at, what the forces are affecting us, and the modes of nature. But then Arjun, he asked the pertinent question: how do I recognize someone who's transcended the modes? Because Krishna describes how wonderful that is. And then, how do I transcend the modes? In other words, it's not just some dilettante thing where we're seeing how the world works, but we want to wend our way through the world so that we can have the best outcome. And the best outcome is not to take birth again, or at least to do it in such a way that we're ending the process. It's hard to come from very, very conditioned to perfection in one lifetime. But there's nothing else really that's more auspicious than to try to progress. And right at the beginning of the Gita, practically in the second chapter, Krishna assures us, Neha vikramanashosti pratyavayo navidyate svapamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bayat. This is the best advertisement you can give. He says, whatever you do in this Krishna consciousness, there's no loss. In other words, you're carrying it through to your next life. And even a little advancement on this path protects one from the most fearful type of danger. What is that? Losing the human form of life. Losing the human form of life. And then being completely helpless, until you come back up. So it's worth, try. And what to speak of making really good progress. Maybe only in a handful of births you can actually go back to Godhead. So the point is, this is the best investment. We're investing our time, our energy, our, everything. Money. This is the best investment because you don't lose. You may become a billionaire in this lifetime, but what about the next lifetime? You're still alive. Nobody dies. And all of that, to become a billionaire, I think you got to, have a heart of stone, really, to have that much money. And so many people are suffering, and you're wallowing away with this $100 billion is insane. But anyway, you're not going to take it with you, right? That's the first lesson. If you really believe it, nobody dies. Najayate mriyate vakadachan. It's not me speaking. Krishna says, Najayate mriyate vakadachan. The living entity does not take birth or die at any time. Nayam bhut vabha vitana bhuya. Don't know that they come into being. All living entities exist already, And Arjo, Nitya, Shashvata, with unborn, eternal, ever-existing, and primeval, the living entity is not slain when the body is slain. Slain means, doesn't work anymore. Some disease, old age, whatever. A bullet in it, doesn't matter. It stops. It's a machine. Eventually it breaks down. So when we're all going to face that moment. Are we going to have some assets of devotional service in the bank, consciousness of Krishna? Can we remember Krishna? If we do, that'll be the perfection of our life. Krishna says in the 8th chapter, Antakali tamameva smadan mukva kalevaram yapriyati samadbhavam yasinat yatra sangshaya. At the end time, at the time of death, Antakali tamameva smadan mukva kalevaram. one who remembers me, yak priyati samadbhavam, he attains to my nature, comes back home. There's no doubt about it, he says. So isn't it worth trying to cultivate that consciousness so that we can remember Krishna at the time of death? That's the whole point. So that can only be done when we learn how to navigate these modes so that we cultivate the mode of goodness or mode of pure goodness, and which means we don't do those things that drag us down to the other modes, and we do things that cultivate the higher modes. And that process is given in books also, the method of doing it. Okay, so any questions on this verse? Pralayam means dissolution, that's death. All right, let's go on to text 16. Karmanak sukritasyahu satvikam nirmalam palam rajasastu palam dukam ajnanam tamasak palam. All right, different fruits. The result of pious action is pure and is said to be in the mode of goodness. But action done in the mode of passion results in misery, and action performed in the mode of ignorance results in foolishness. Purport: the result of pious activities in the mode of goodness is pure. Therefore the sages, who are free from all illusion, are situated in happiness. But activities in the mode of passion are simply miserable. Any activity for material happiness is bound to be defeated. If, for example, one wants to have a skyscraper, so much human misery has to be undergone before a big skyscraper can be built. Excuse me. The financier has to take much trouble to earn a massive wealth, and those who are slaving to construct a building have to render physical toil. The miseries are there. Thus, the Bhagavad Gita says that in any activity performed under the spell of the mode of passion, there is definitely great misery. There may be a little so-called mental happiness. I have the house or this money. I have this house or this money. But this is not actual happiness. As far as the mode of ignorance is concerned, the performer is without knowledge, and therefore all his activities result in present misery, and afterwards he will go on toward animal life. Animal life is always miserable, although under the spell of the illusory energy, Maya, the animals do not understand this. Slaughtering poor animals is also due to the mode of ignorance. The animal killers do not know that in the future the animal will have a body suitable to kill them. That is the law of nature. In human society, if one kills a man, he has to be hanged. That is the law of the state. Because of ignorance, people do not perceive that there is a complete state controlled by the Supreme Lord. Every living creature is the son of the Supreme Lord, and the Lord, does not tolerate even an ant's being killed. One has to pay for it. So indulgence in animal killing for the taste of the tongue is the grossest kind of ignorance. A human being has no need to kill animals, because God has supplied so many nice things. If one indulges in meat eating anyway, it is to be understood that he is acting in ignorance and is making his future very dark. Of all kinds of animal killing, the killing of cows is most vicious, because the cow gives us all kinds of pleasures by supplying milk. Cow slaughter is an act of the grossest type of ignorance. In the Vedic literature, Rig Veda 9:46-4, the words Gobhi Prinitamatsaram indicate that one who, being fully satisfied by milk, is desirous of killing the cow is in the grossest ignorance. There is also a prayer in the Vedic literature that states, Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha Jagat Hitaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha. My Lord, you are the well-wisher of the cows and the Brahmins, and you are the well-wisher of the entire human society and world. Vishnu Purana 1:1965. The purport is that special mention is given in that prayer for the protection of the cows and the Brahmins. Brahmanas are the symbol of spiritual education, and cows are the symbol of the most valuable food. Those two living creatures, the Brahmins and the cows, must be given all protection. That is real advancement of civilization. In modern human society, spiritual knowledge is neglected, and cow killing is encouraged. It is to be understood, then, that human society is advancing in the wrong direction, and is clearing the path to its own condemnation. A civilization which guides the citizens to become animals in the next lives is certainly not a human civilization. The present human civilization is, of course, grossly misled by the modes of passion and ignorance. It is a very dangerous age, and all nations should take care to provide the easiest process, Krishna consciousness, to save humanity from the greatest danger. So, two things come to mind. First, this idea that in the mode of passion you'll work hard and get some pleasure, but that will eventually cause misery. That brings up one of my favorite verses from the 5th chapter. Yehi sangsparjaja bhoga dukkayona evate adyantabantang konteya natesu ramate buddha. That the pleasures of the senses are temporary, and that pleasure is the source of your misery. Sangsparshita bhoga means the enjoyment of the contact of the senses with the sense objects. That's sense pleasure. That's the source of your misery. And those pleasures have a beginning and an end. That's one of the miseries of them, is that they end. But besides that, they bury you deeper in the modes of nature. And so the wise do not take their pleasure there. But we're pleasure-seeking beings. We're part and parcel of Krishna. Krishna is Anandamaya Vyasad. He's full of bliss. And he's enjoying like anything. So our enjoying propensity is not unnatural. But how we enjoy determines our fate. So therefore, one has to learn how to take pleasure in serving Krishna. And that's the process of Bhakti Yoga. And it truly is, it works. Otherwise, Prabhupada would have never been able to take step one in spreading this movement. He was able, in a controlled environment in Manhattan in 1965, 1966, to chant the holy name, purely, and have people who were hearing and chanting. Now, they weren't pure, but they were becoming purified, and they were experiencing something in that chanting that we can experience today. It's just like any drug, If you take the drug, it's going to have an effect. It's proven scientifically. So it's the fact that the chanting of the holy name, it's the yajna or sadhana of the age. It is described, each age, each yuga has a certain practice or dharma, which is most suitable for the people of that age to attain perfection. So in this age, Sankirtan Yajna. Sankirtan means chanting the holy name, especially in congregation. What is that verse? Krishna Varnam, Tvisha Krishnam, Sango Pangastra Parshadam, Yagyar Sankirtana Praya, Yajanti Hi Sumedasa. That the incarnation of this age, a mere 535 years ago or so, appeared as Lord Chaitanya. It's Krishna appearing as his own devotee. There's a whole understanding of that I won't get into right now. But it's the same Krishna, and he's always either, the Krishna Varna means he's chanting the syllables Krishna, Krishna, or he belongs to the Varna of Krishna. In other words, he's Krishna himself. But he's not blackish, he's golden colored, our Krishna. And he's come with his associates and his weapons. Ram has the bow, Krishna has the chakra, and Balaram has the club, and Lord Chaitanya has the holy names. The holy names he's chanting, and also his beauty, his all attractiveness. That was also very disarming, So the holy names, he's not killing the demons, he's killing the demoniac propensity in the heart by spreading the holy name. And we can experience that ourselves, You become a different person when you actually absorb yourself in the process of Bhakti Yoga centered on chanting the holy name. So that's the Dharma of the age. And if we take part in it, then we'll also experience its benefits. And we will be less attracted to sense gratification and more attracted to serving Krishna. When you chant Krishna's holy name, that's service. This chanting, thinking of him, that's one of the main services, remembering Krishna. Hearing, chanting, remembering. There's 9 processes given by Prahlad Maharaj in the basic. Begins with hearing, which you're already doing, and chanting. We can do that in a few minutes. Hearing and chanting. And so, inevitably, if you hear and chant, you're going to remember also. That naturally grows. So those are the basic 3. And archanam, worshiping the deity, serving in different ways. There's other practices. So, he's describing here the fruits. activities, sukrita, pious activities in the mode of goodness, give a purified result. What does it say? Action is pure, said to be, the result of piety is pure, said to be the mode of goodness. But then the mode of passion produces misery, and the mode of ignorance produces foolishness. So we have to choose. We have to say, no, I'm not going to engage in that activity. That's mode of ignorance. There may be some perverted pleasure in it, but it's not worth it. It's just like, if someone really thinks about it, getting involved in drugs, it's just suicide. You harm yourself. You ruin your brain. I tell too many stories about myself, but I remember I was a child of the 60s. I grew up in the 60s, and I was part of the young people in the 60s who were mostly political, because there was this horrible war in Vietnam, and we were just aghast and appalled by that. So we demonstrated and all that, but I was also involved. I was living on the Lower East Side where Prabhupada started, just a few blocks from where he started his movement. I was a few years afterward. So one of the things you probably heard about is and they're becoming more popular again, the hallucinogens. Not just LSD, but magic mushrooms and all this other stuff. So it affects your mind. It's the whole thing, and you get visions and whatever. But there's also, it's very dangerous, because you cannot come back down from those trips. We had one fellow here, this was many years ago, in the early 90s, who had gotten into trips and he wanted to be a devotee, but he couldn't quite come off of those hallucinations. I remember was watching him. He was going around Tulsi every morning, the Tulsi plant, the sacred plant. And he was getting ready to water, but he was going through some kind of trip, and he wasn't watering. It was tragic, really. He couldn't become a devotee. So there I am, and I never took LSD. I hadn't taken LSD yet, when it was already 1968 or 69. So I happened to be in my apartment 2 blocks from Tompkins Square Park, and I was lying there. I was alone. I had some LSD, and I was thinking, should I take it now? Should I do it and kind of get it over with? I don't know. What did I say? And then it was a super soul. No, not a good idea. Yeah, I don't know what would have happened to me, alone in the dark room, oh my God. So anyway, I never took it, and I'm so happy I didn't. Instead, eventually I started chanting Hare Krishna, and Prabhupada knew the power of it, how it can give you a kind of high, a wholesome high. And so the devotees, when they experienced it, many of them had taken drugs, And so they asked, Prabhupada, can we make a pamphlet? And advertise for the temple, little temple, stay high forever. We'll get the attention of all the people around here, because a lot of them want to be high. And Prabhupada said, yes, you can do that. And they made it. I forget what it said, but basically, it caught their attention, and it's through sound. You're getting high. I'm sorry?
It does the same thing with the neurotransmitters.
Yeah, they've done tests, huh? Yeah. But I mean, but it's wholesome. In other words, it doesn't. There's no bad effect to it. It's all a wholesome effect. The good effect is that you want to give up the other stuff. First thing, meat eating. Actually, a lot of times, meat eating, becoming a vegetarian precedes your becoming interested. You're more receptive if you're not, doing that. Anyway, this is different things. But the basic principle here is that we're all affected by these modes. This is what material life is. And if we have no way of transcending the modes, then we'll be caught in it, even by the mode of goodness. It's not good enough, because it's always tinged with some mode of passion. And the best is you'll be a good person, which is good. You'll probably get another human life, But it's prolonging. It's not sufficient to be, to go back to Godhead. It's a nice platform. People in the mode of goodness are more likely to be receptive to the message, because it's thoughtful, philosophical. Where someone who's just looking for a high and a quick, sensation of pleasure, is probably not going to come here and sit in his class, But intelligent people, not because I'm giving it, but because Bhagavad Gita is here. And because after all, think about it. All right, you invest this in this lost year, and then you chant, okay. And you're missing out on all of that stuff. But the end result, if you can succeed, is incomprehensibly, multiplications of these pleasure. An eternal life of ever increasing bliss and knowledge. If it exists, I want to try to invest in that. So that's what Krishna is giving us here. Okay, we have time for one more.
Sorry, can I?
Yeah, go ahead. You have a mic?
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Right, so it says in the purport about something about how you might have to come back as an animal.
Yeah, is that 17? Is that what it was?
Sorry. 16.
16, I'm saying, correct. 16, I'm getting ahead of myself. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the animal killers do not know that in the future the animal will have a body suitable to kill them. Oh, wait, no, sorry. But this is kind of about the previous, all the verses, how if you're in the mode of ignorance, you may have to come back as an animal.
Yeah.
Basically about that. Okay, so I was speaking to someone, and I was trying to get the idea of reincarnation, and trying to sell someone on reincarnation, and they were like, okay, yeah, I believe that, but actually, I want to come back as a gorilla.
Okay.
He was like, I want to come back. I want to come back as a gorilla. And I've heard, seen other people like, oh no, it'd be great to become a dog or a cat because you just. So what would you say to someone who is just like gung ho, like, okay, yeah, I can buy into reincarnation, but I want to come back as an animal?
Have you really thought it through? I don't know what you could say to someone like that. The thing is, they've romanticized, what it is to be a gorilla. But you have to realize you're not going to be in a gorilla's body with a human brain. You understand, right? In other words, you're going to be, it's all going to be like a big curtain coming down, and you're not going to be able to enjoy anything that you can enjoy now. It's going to be like a lot of darkness, and you won't be a gorilla for long either. Then you have to leave the gorilla body. Then who knows what you'd be? What's your worst body? You say, well, I don't want to be an aardvark. You might become an aardvark. In other words, it's just you're just prolonging the sojourn in the material world, and it's you don't know what's going to happen. Only in the human form do you have the ability to guide yourself, because the strong intelligence, if you cultivate it, can say no to the mind and the senses. I mean, that's everyday life is like that. Prabhupada talks about, I just hear him on the tape, and it's true, the kids. Prabhupada said he wouldn't have never gone to school except for his mother, because he loved to play, and the father would try to encourage him lightly, but he was very lenient. And so Prabhupada said, I'll go tomorrow, and the father would say, okay. But he said, but my mother, no. She insisted I get an education, and she hired some man, apparently this is done in India, to forcibly take them, to school. Right? They do that. I don't know why it's not done in America. But, so the point is, the kid's in the mode of passion. He doesn't care about anything, just immediate. It's the old Shreyas and Preyas thing. Preyas is immediate pleasure. The more you're into immediate pleasure, the more you're animalistic. Animals don't plan ahead. What am I going to do 3 months from now? Where's the mate? Now where's the food? Where's the safety? Let me run away. So it's just an aspect of ignorance to romanticize, some animal life, or some like that. And then, but you're not really thinking it through. Then you'll have to die again, and you'll be in the modes of the different animals, and your whereabouts are unknown. Go ahead.
Krishna. So I have a question. So how do animal progress? Like, for instance, my little doggy, I take her to temple, I feed her prasadam, she hears the holy names. So Tyler,
she's a fortunate.
Tyler Prabhu says, she's going to be a better thing next life. But what about wild animals or animals? How are they going to advance?
No, it's built in. In other words, it's a certain term you have to spend. But then you move on to a higher, like, I don't know exactly how it works, but the fish are lower than any of the animals, So you spend some time coming up to fish species, then you take, you're a frog, you're or some, I don't know exactly how it works. But it's all automatic. It's programmed in by higher powers, by the demigods, the super soul, You're burning off certain karma. You're not incurring any karma in the animal. You're not responsible. But in that animal life, you're burning off previous bad karma that you had as a human being, and gradually come back up to the human form. So that's why Krishna says, in another favorite, Nirdeham Ajam Sulabham Sudurlabham. He's explaining there how the human body is like a very competent boat to cross over the ocean of birth and death. But you need a good captain. That's the guru. And then you need favorable winds. I'm providing him. Krishna's speaking this. I'm providing him in the form of the Vedas in the Bhagavad Gita. So you have the good boat, you have the good captain, and you have the favorable winds. And one who doesn't take advantage of that and cross over the ocean is Atmaha, is virtual killer of the soul. You can't kill the soul, but you're prolonging your agony here. So he uses the phrase Nirdeham Ajam Sulabham Sudurlabham. Is that something broken? Okay. Hare Krishna. So Sulabham, Sudurlabham are actually opposites. Sulabham means easy to get, and Sudurlabham means very difficult to get. So in this case, Sulabham doesn't mean easy, but it means automatically gotten. In other words, you don't have to do anything to get the human form. You're going to come up to the human form. But what you do in the human form makes all the difference. And it's rare. I mean, there's only 8 billion of us. How many mosquitoes are there in the world? Every one of those blades of grass is a different, soul in there. So there's hundreds and trillions and quadrillions of other forms of life on this earth. And there's only 8 billion human beings. And among those, there's only a few who are sitting in Bhagavad Gita class. So how rare it is. You're very fortunate. So take advantage of the boat, take advantage of the opportunity, take advantage of the classes, the books, the prasadam, the kirtan, the deities, everything. And we almost run out. Okay, I have time for 1 minute for a little poem. So pertinent to this class would be, this subject is, everybody dies. Not everybody, but every single body dies. Every body dies, nobody dies. Wake up, and open your eyes. You're not that body, you're a pure spirit soul. Chant the holy name and attain life's goal. So if you remember that, make a t-shirt out of it. You can. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. You think so? I give it to you. You can make $1 million on the t-shirt. All right, so tomorrow we have a class and we're going to read text 17, for sure, right? Yes. Oh, this reminds me of one of my first catches, even before I was an editor.